Tony D and Little Joan, and I can't find any trailers worth a damn on YouTube these days. I think we're finally caught up to where the strike was. Um, but I thought I'd talk about Star Wars shills on Twitter because they seem to be everywhere all of a sudden. Smash like and subscribe. Thank you for smash liking and subscribing. Ooh. Check out my books. The links are in the description. Comedy Horror in South Jersey. It's the Pineys, books 1 through 13, available at Amazon.com. Don't forget, Kindle Unlimited is free. I think this is one of them, but it's part of the argument that's been going on in Twitter. Um, you know, and I'm afraid to click on it because every time you click on something on an X, and it suddenly starts showing up in your feed, and the shills flooded my feed for a while. It was really annoying. I didn't want to see this stuff. I'm trying to ignore it, and it just keeps coming back. I click on it to go, what the hell is this? And then I read it and go, I shouldn't have clicked on this. But in a nutshell, they are defending Star Wars, which is weird to me because there's nothing current out on Star Wars, right? There's no current TV shows. They've all been out. There's no current movie. This is all about the announcement of the new director of Star Wars, a Pakistani documentary filmmaking feminist who has no business directing a movie like this. Absolutely none. Um, you know, they are going to need a bunch of people around her just to get the movie finished. Because I don't see anyone making that leap from documentary filmmaker to major motion picture with a massive budget of tens of millions of dollars. That's a big jump. Some of the guys who had already made pretty decent sized movies make that jump and have some problems because I don't know, it's tough. There's a lot of pressure, it's a lot of money. Um, you know, budgeting films is some of it's a little bit of a guesswork, what you're anticipating, what you're going to need to get a shot or shoot a scene. And obviously, they've got to factor in some buffer, but that buffer quickly gets out of control when you're talking about a movie that's, hundreds of millions of dollars as opposed to just 10 million. I mean, look at the Marvels, look at all these recent Disney movies. Look at Star Wars. Very expensive. Some of these movies they've reshot over, definitely some of the TV shows, some of the movies too. They've reshot tons of it. If you look at Captain America, New World Order, or whatever they're calling it now, they've reshot a bunch of stuff. The rumor is they're reshooting most of the movie. that's friggin' crazy when you consider you've got name talent like Harrison Ford. Harrison Ford isn't cheap. You can say, oh my God, what about Indiana Jones 5? Harrison Ford has name recognition still. I mean, look, yeah, celebrity isn't what it used to be, but Harrison Ford, yeah, he ain't even going to accept, his agent won't allow him to accept the job unless the money's right. Come on. And it's not like he needs it, and he is in his 80s, so. Anthony Mackie, still solid leading guy. They certainly need him for Captain America now. Unless they woo Chris Evans back, they need Anthony Mackie. He's the lead. And there's probably a short list of other people because, again, it's the Marvel Universe that they need, which means they're going to get a little more money than normal because their agents are going to ask for more. Why wouldn't you? If Hollywood needs you, you get a bump. Absolutely. And the way Disney spends money, I wouldn't be surprised if they just give it to them, not even negotiate. So this is going to be a very expensive movie. Daisy Ridley's in it. And again, she doesn't have to come back, but they need her. They cannot do this movie without Daisy Ridley. 100%. 100%. They need. Who else is going to be in it? Adam Driver doesn't seem to want to be in this thing. So, from a functional standpoint, this is going to be a fairly expensive movie, and it's Star Wars. So, you have a director who's never done a movie of this size. That's a different animal than a documentary. A documentary can be like two people, literally two people. You know, a cameraman and somebody with a microphone going, what do you think happened? And the subjects of the documentary. They're not actors. You just have to get access to them. They're not paid. You don't pay. Usually, you don't pay people in a documentary. You just go to places. You're not managing much expense there other than plane fare. An office, making a lot of calls, and later editing, but that's not what you do in a movie like Star Wars. You got to build sets. You have to have rehearsals. You have to have good actors. Does she even know actors? I mean, she's a documentary film person. That's not someone who knows actors. Period. Unless she's done narrative, unless she's done plays or been an actress herself, what does she know about actors? Does she know how to handle them? Does she know how to, what they're supposed to do? You can't shoot a Star Wars movie like a documentary. How's that going to look? Shaky camera and people talking to the camera? That isn't going to work in a Star Wars movie. It's absolutely not what people want. So the only thing I can think of is Hollywood is so obsessed with the virtue signal, they're probably hiring a bunch of people around her to do the work, or to tell her, no, you have to do it like this. Now that's assuming she plays ball and listens to those people. She might not. What is Disney going to do if this woman says, oh, we're going to shoot this Star Wars movie a completely different way? And then shoot some cockamamie shaky cam footage. What if she shoots it like a documentary? What if she literally makes a documentary about the Jedi Order and Daisy Ridley? And now there's some rumors going around, by the way, on some of the scripts. One was Rey and Finn team up. That was John Boyega's character, which it's pretty generic. The other one was she somehow gets pregnant by Kylo Ren, Adam Driver's character, even though he died in the movie and they didn't have sex. And because he's not coming back, he's already announced that. And then it's going to be years later, and their prodigy, their child, is 9 years old and somehow going to be able to use both the light and dark side of the Force, which, of course, doesn't make any sense. Now, this is just a rumor, but Yellow Flash has a video if you want more details. But, why wouldn't she do something like that? I mean, to a Star Wars fan, that makes very little sense. Even a current Star Wars fan, I gotta think, would be like, I don't know. But that's not. I mean, it's not the majority of the audience. This isn't going to coast on its laurels. Disney's been knocking this to pieces with every single project, starting with the Phantom Menace. Just knocking out a piece of it. Going down, down, down. Yeah. The movies don't chart that way in terms of their money. There are other factors involved. But I'm talking creatively. It's kind of like what James Lindsay talks about in terms of the things that are going on here with the wokeness. The Marxists are attacking the institutions and taking them over and undermining them from within. So, Star Wars and Disney, I believe, have been undermined from within. So, you can hollow them out and wear them like a skin suit, but at the end of the day, they still have to provide something. They, they can miss the mark, but they have to kind of get there. This woman could potentially deliver a product that's so off the mark. The studio would be like, well, we can't release this. We literally can't release it. Fans, even her fans couldn't defend it. And the weird thing is, you've got people defending this, and what they're conflating is they're conflating the fans' dissatisfaction with a woman who doesn't appear to be qualified in the slightest to direct a Star Wars movie, a major motion picture, with people who are just racist. So, from their perspective, and I think this is more framing than it is their belief, but they're saying that if you don't support this woman, you're obviously some sort of racist and bigot, and you don't like women, and you don't like people of color, and you don't like anything. And I mean, it's just, again, it's a Marxist tactic. You basically kick them in the nads and force them to defend their lack of racism. Which, once you start denying that, it makes you sound crazy. Oh, I'm not racist. And then they dig into, oh yeah, show us how you're not racist, and then it becomes about you, becomes personal. That's one of the things. One of the tactics, make the political personal. These people, and look, most of the people who are getting called out on Star Wars, and again, this has happened on Ethan Van Sciver's Twitter feed and a few others, and I like Ethan. I think he's doing cool work, but I think it's weird, even if you have a really bad tweet, for someone who has, Ethan has tens of thousands of followers. To go at someone who has a bad take, who has like, I don't know, 100 followers, why? Why even give it oxygen? At that point, it's different if you go at someone who's relatively famous, like now this woman, this Pakistani filmmaker. I mean, now she's famous. And kind of, I think, arrogant. So I think it's fine to criticize. I mean, I think there are limits. Daisy Ridley, millionaire. Kathleen Kennedy, certainly. People like that. They're in the elite. Some of these shills are just, first off, the other question is, are they even real? So that may be part of the strategy. They may see these people with 200 followers and think, oh, this has to be a fake account run by some PR firm. And the things they say are pretty woke and stupid. And, suddenly my feed was full of people saying, oh, this scene from Ahsoka just makes me feel so wonderful inside. And I just thought, whoever says that about a TV show, ever, like even one you say I like, I've never thought to tweet something like that about much of anything. It seems over the top, overly, praiseworthy for Star Wars, especially a Star Wars that's shaky at best. Ahsoka being a prime example of a very shaky show, I think. I mean, it'd be different if you were arguing something like The Mandalorian. I mean, it had a few bright spots in there that people liked. That's about it in the new stuff. I mean, the new stuff has been widely panned, and the people who defend it don't seem either A, don't seem to be like real people, or B, they make arguments that conflate things like politics and racism with the lack of support. Now, there can't be any other reason you don't love this movie as much as I do in this moment in time on Twitter, other than that you're some sort of monster that hurts people and spends their day in their parents' basement, saying awful things to people online. That's the only explanation from their point of framing. And to some extent, that attack sort of works for a time. But it's a law of diminishing returns, right? So it works to a small group of people who are also virtue signaling, mostly because they're scared of being called out too. So they jump on board. But some of those people look at that, people who are right on the bubble, look at that and finally go, what am I doing? What is this? These people are too much. And they pull back. That's the first step. They pull back. And the moment they pull back, they get off of Twitter for a while and they kind of forget. And then after a while, they're like, I don't feel as tense. I don't feel that I need to go online much anymore, at least regarding Star Wars. And they kind of fall out of it slowly over a period of days and weeks. And then suddenly they're out of the fan base altogether because it's just too much drama for them. They weren't that invested in the first place. It's just the movie franchise and some TV shows. I've seen that pattern with message boards. I knew someone who got deeply involved in a message board for a band from the 70s. Loved the band, and there was a whole following of these fans, and they were on the message board, and you sort of get into the community for a while, and I can kind of understand that. I've been caught up in some of the online communities for things that I enjoyed, but after a while, you just go, what am I doing? And you get discouraged, and you just back out of it. Usually no big blow up, although sometimes there is, but usually not. It's just usually like, what am I doing? I got other things to do. Or you just get distracted. Like, I don't know, maybe you get busy at work, and you just stop going to the message board, or in this case, Twitter, and you're just out for a few weeks because you're just busy with life. Maybe you get married, go on vacation, go on a honeymoon, you're feeling good, and then you get back online and see the same old crap's happening, and you go, ugh. So I think this pattern of doing this over and over again, as they've done, works to a small extent. It gets them attention. It gets them, newspaper coverage. For a while, they gain people, the same sort of virtue signaling idiots who would sign on to just about anything, but they pretty much milked that well dry. I think those people are now leaving because they've kind of come to the end of their rope at this point. Yeah, maybe they got a handful of teenagers who are just getting on board with the woke crap. People who join a trend very, very late and maybe get caught up in Star Wars. Maybe they're like 14. They never knew about Star Wars. Kind of just didn't hear about it, and then one day they discovered it, like, ooh. But I think for the most part, these are either shills or people who are just, they're too emotionally invested in it. And, man, they got some bizarre tweets. Just very bizarre tweets. And I've been very tempted to blast some of them because, I like to I like to mix it up sometimes, but more often than not these days, I start to click on it and I go, no, no, I'm not gonna add fuel to this fire. Let this die. Let this just fade in the background. I don't need another wackadoo on the internet arguing with me. It doesn't really do much. I would rather have, someone who is a little more stable discuss things back and forth. For my YouTube channel, I had some people who really went at me, and I warned them. I said, don't start calling me names, or I'm just gonna delete you and ban you from the channel. And they did, so away they went. Same thing on a few people on Twitter that I didn't like. It got too out of hand. I don't have to support that. I don't have to argue with them. It doesn't really do anything. I'm not going to convince them. They're not going to turn around and go, well, you know what? You're right. I'm sorry. That doesn't really happen unless they're polite to begin with. I actually had it happen a couple of times on YouTube when I resisted the temptation to insult somebody, but I politely corrected them. And even though they weren't all that polite to me, and then a couple of people actually turned around and said, oh, I'm sorry about that. I didn't realize that. Or, you know what, you may be right. And I was surprised. But for most of these shills, they're very angry. And at anyone that would dare criticize their Star Wars. And it very much feels like they're deflecting the criticism because they feel personally attacked by criticism of Star Wars and this woman. Somehow. I don't know why. I don't know why they feel that way. It's weird. I mean, again, these people are elites. They have money. They have influence. They wouldn't be considered for these positions if they didn't have something along those lines. Yeah, you could say, well, this woman's a documentary filmmaker from Pakistan. Mm-hmm. She's a feminist in Pakistan. You can't be a feminist in Pakistan without having a bit of money. And she speaks English, and she's world traveler. I think she has money. And you could argue, well, maybe because she's successful. I think she probably had money. A lot of people in the biz, whether it's documentary or show business or whatever, they come from money because it's it's a rich man's industry. Most people don't start dirt poor in filmmaking. They need equipment, they need money, they need the luxury of time. Rich people have that. So a lot of people who do get in the movie industry, they're rich or well off. Or their parents supported them. A handful of them are just so GD talented they somehow blasted in, but that's rare. I don't think this woman is particularly talented because, her documentaries aren't setting the world on fire. I don't think she would even accept this gig unless, if her documentaries were. She'd be queen of her own industry. She wouldn't need to do a Star Wars movie. If her Pakistani feminist documentaries were making tens of millions of dollars worldwide and people were talking about her, she might be considered for the Star Wars directorship because Kathleen Kennedy, I think, is out of her mind, but it would be probably unlikely she would accept it because she would look at it as, well, I'm a documentary filmmaker and I don't want to ruin what's going on there. I mean, that's obviously what she wants to do, and she'd be getting her message across. It's a weakness that she took this gig. It's a sign that she knows her message isn't getting across, and now she's trying to get it through Star Wars for some reason. A very male-dominated, male-centric IP that they're trying to make female. So, It's not going to work. Again, the moment women decide this isn't popular, the moment you hear teenagers, you know, girls, start saying stuff like, ew, you're in Star Wars. I like Star Wars when I was a baby. That they'll drop it like a hot rock when it becomes detrimental to their reputation. And if their boyfriends aren't watching it, they definitely don't want a part of it. They're going to glom on to something else that supports them in their relationships or whatever. Again, that's what women like. They like relationships and shoes and talking about relationships and how they might pan out and all that good stuff. There's nothing wrong with that. It's what they like. It's what they like in their entertainment. Star Wars doesn't have that. Or when it does, it's a bunch of wacky looking women dressed as aliens carrying space lasers, and it's not as realistic as, say, two real characters on a boat living in New England trying to sort through their problems. It's got to be realistic. The more real it is, the more people relate to it. Women don't watch Star Wars not because, it's not about relationships. And forcing all that stuff into the franchise makes it a second tier thing, which is why they need it to be popular in order to get in. Once it's not popular, then it's just embarrassing. There's nothing much there. It's not like, this is why I think the fans of the current Star Wars are so obsessed with the relationship between Rey and Kylo Ren. It's because it's a relationship. It's really the only relationship in the franchise, really. There's a couple of other side ones, but, the Kylo Ren Rey dynamic, they're obsessed with it, which is why they're probably going to build the whole movie around it. It's why they call them shippers, because it's a relationship and they're obsessed with it. And this was not the case with old Star Wars, obviously. It was about a bunch of characters. Now it's only about relationships and soap opera-y stuff. So if that trend continues in Star Wars, it's likely to be a movie about a bunch of women, female Jedi, who are great at everything they do. The villains will mostly be men. There will be a few good men, but they'll be incompetent and emasculated. And there will, of course, be a gay Jedi, I'm sure. I'm sure that'll be a big announcement. And maybe a trans Jedi. All the stuff that was pitched, I think, and Kathleen Kennedy had another show or comic or both. Knights of the Old Republic, I think it was. And they had that kind of stuff in there. So I think that kind of stuff will get tossed in. And it may not even be Kathleen Kennedy pushing it in. It may very well be the documentary filmmaker throwing it in so she can make more points about feminism, femininity, gender, to piss off men, which she's announced openly. I mean, you have a director, allegedly, who has openly said she likes to piss off men. Like, that's not good for an audience, for a general movie audience. That's half your audience. And again, men drive the movie industry. It was the classic demo for decades. 18 to 35-year-old males. Because men pick the activity for the date. Women support the men. That's the way it works. Now you have a situation, how's this going to work? How are you going to get men into the theater? I guess you can expect a few men to be henpecked into going to see Star Wars because their overbearing wives or girlfriends demand they do. but that seems like a small amount of people, very small. Um, I don't think the women in the early stages of their relationship want to be overbearing and push their current suitor into something he doesn't sound like he wants to do. They would rather, and this is generally a thing with women, they like to be supportive and nurturing, so they support their significant other. Whatever they're into too. It's not going to be Star Wars. Men are done with it. Yeah, you had some hardcore fans that keep holding on by their fingernails, but they're going away every day. It's the same thing in comics. It's the same thing with Star Trek. It's the same thing with Doctor Who now. And they're all packing up and getting out. James Bond, same deal. Now, when you represent these IPs, those men, or those former fans, are either out or they're going to be extremely skeptical. The song and dance you're going to have to do to woo these people back, I mean, it's going to be massive. You can't just suddenly announce that, well, we're getting out of feminism. Like, that wouldn't be enough. That would not be enough at all. You couldn't just announce, well, we're going to get some new people directing. No, wouldn't be good enough. You would have to get the people. You would have to get, first off, you'd have to fire a bunch of people, and they're not going to go anytime soon. And you would have to hire people who are so unbelievably based. You would have to get, masculine heroes that were so unbelievably masculine. And you would have to suffer the fallout from alienating the tiny, tiny audience you did cultivate in these shippers and woke-tards online. This isn't one of them, by the way. This is Sierra Whiskey arguing with one of them. So, yeah, I mean, it's just the end game. I guess it's ESG. I guess it's trying to rewire society. It's not working. It's not working. All it's doing, it's kind of resetting us back to a time. And there was a time like this. I just barely remember it, or heard about it, I guess. There was a time when movies weren't that important. Television, not that important. Media, just not that important. People dismissed it. Oh, you're an actor? I guess. It wasn't considered that great. It was considered okay, maybe. It was considered, it wasn't the end all be all. Now like, a lot of the people who are still famous are they're just too famous, or they're too overexposed now. There's no mystique to their fame anymore. They're so overexposed. I don't think people care about them, and they're sick of hearing about them. Actually, there's only so much you can talk about your life and what you do before it's too much. And if you're not doing anything interesting, if you're just a millionaire living your life, and hey, I got a new house. Like, if I suddenly started making money hand over fist with the Pineys, which would be great, for a while it would be interesting because you could follow my rise, and maybe I get a new house and a car, and that would be fun for a while. But a few years later, after I have all that, it wouldn't be interesting anymore. And I would have to, either scale back my videos, which I'd probably do anyway because I'd probably be so busy, or I'd have to come up with other new things to talk about, because talking about me would quickly grow boring because there'd be no challenges in that. At least I can talk about going to markets and stuff, and whether or not I made money, which is only so interesting, but you never know. I mean, something could happen that's kind of more interesting than normal. But anyhow, I digress. The shills are all over Star Wars. Maybe it's because I clicked on some, but it seems like their activity is just spiked. And don't click on them would be my advice. I know it's tempting. I know you want to just blast them. I don't think you want to. I don't think you want to feed these people any more attention. They already, it's what they're doing. They seem to be begging for attention and approval. And if you don't give them the approval, they'll call you a bigot, which is a way for them to cope with your lack of approval of them. So it's a coping mechanism. Well, you don't like Star Wars because you're a bigot, obviously. I'm still right. That's the way it rolls. And as far as, buying or participating in anything related to Star Wars, I think you'd have to be out of your mind at this point to give these people a single penny. I mean, if you still got Disney Plus, even if it's just for your kids, there's got to be something else you can get them, right? There's got to be another channel. Unless they're utterly beholden to one of those, I don't know, some kid show on Disney Plus, you got to get rid of it, I say. You got to unplug and stop giving Disney your money, because it's the only way they'll finally stop. They'll stop one way or another. Now, they may never stop in terms of hunting down ESG or whatever, but they may eventually reach the point where they have so little money that they have to sell off, everything eventually. So we need to hasten that process, I think. I don't think there's any hope that they're going to turn the boat around on their own. Now, I mean, there is a rumor that, Peter Boghossian's talking about that the Democrats are going to throw the wokies under the bus in the coming months, which I think is probably true. That may spurn them to suddenly turn around at Disney and do that. I don't think so, though. I don't know. I think it's going to be a much longer process. They're going to continue to suffer. I think, even if they did that, they'd probably be deluged with lawsuits from these woke idiots who worked for them. And as I think Mark Cuban will be, because of the various policies, I think the moment they try to stop them, the moment they try to get rid of all this DEI and CRT and nonsense, that's when they get hit with lawsuits. And even then, they're still going to have to retool. They'll still have projects in development. They'll need to either cancel or, it may be happening. I mean, the fact that they're reshooting the fourth Captain America movie is a sign that they may be getting out of it. Or at the very least, they're trying to hide it. So, but I don't hold out much hope that the fourth Captain America movie will be any good. It seems to be based on current day comics. I don't know why, but Disney seemed to be in a rush to go from point A, which is when the Marvel Universe started, to point Z, the current day Marvel that isn't selling at all, that appears to have little to no fan base. But they are. I mean, the fact that they're already up to the Red Hulk in Captain America, and Captain Marvel's in it, and all these American Chavez, all these modern characters that have no audience, shows you what a huge mistake I think the MCU has made, or Marvel, or Entertainment, or Disney, or whoever's in charge. I mean, it just, they either overestimate the audience in comics, or they completely ignored it, in which case, why even bother? Why not just make some of the old characters super woke, Like, for instance, one of the characters that was still around, post, I'll say modern Avengers, we'd be up about, after Avengers Endgame, we should have been around 1980s in terms of the comic books, and that would have been second tier Avengers and a bunch of crap, honestly, that wasn't very good. But there were a lot of different characters. There was some good in there. X-Men was huge. But, they seem to have jumped the shark, and they're going right into modern day comics. and pick one up. I dare you. No, don't. Don't give them any money. Don't encourage the behavior, I say. Anyhow, that's my rant, and rant I did. So Star Wars shills, please get out of my feed. Don't make me block you all. It's tiresome. Takes me too long, and there's too many of you. And if you're listening to this, if you're a PR firm trying to get the read here, understand what you're doing. Well, you know what you're doing, but this isn't healthy for the franchise in the long term. You're just feeding off the bad attention for as long as you can keep that ball in the air. And as you're keeping the ball in the air, it gets a little lower each time until finally it'll just be on the ground and you'll never get it back up. And it'll be a game of which PR firm takes the blame for that, because Disney ain't going to take the blame, I'll tell you right now. Nobody ever takes the blame. The executives aren't going to take the blame. Whoever's in charge of Disney when that happens. No. Anyhow, that's it for me, Tony D and Little Joan. Thanks for listening. We'll see you tomorrow.